talk about Sidney Crosby. No, before you turn this off, we're barely gonna talk about him and Lemieux. Crosby and Lemieux nipped it in the bud right away and said it's not true, it's ridiculous. And even if it is true, sometimes friends fight. Doesn't mean the end of the world. The thing I want to talk about is, don't look now, but Sidney Crosby has points in 3 straight games. And any other season of his career, that's not a story at all. People would look at you and go, yeah, of course he does. He's only got points in 3 straight? Man, he's cold. Crosby is in the middle of just his second multi-game point streak this season, and the last one was only 2 games. This is his first 3-game point streak, and he did it in a big way with 2 goals. And he better have scored 2 goals against the Blues. He had 9 shots. And it's his second 9-shot game of the season. He had 9 shots against Florida, 1 goal, 2 assists. Apparently, the secret is just take 9 shots. But we do need to talk about Sid the Kid, because something is clearly different this season. I mean, that 2-goal game was great and everything, but Sidney Crosby just passed Connor McDavid in the scoring race. McDavid's last game was November 3rd, almost a month ago. But over a 9-month NHL season featuring 82 regular season games and playoffs, stories come and go. And sometimes you can see them coming, and I think we're on the cusp of one. The resurgence of Sidney Crosby. Points in back-to-back games. Someone says there's a rift between Crosby and Lemieux. He responds to that by scoring 2 goals, and now the Penguins' next 2 games are against the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Edmonton Oilers. Who knows what Crosby does in those games? And if he does big things, that leads into a grueling road trip against the Sharks, Kings, Ducks, and Avs. What better time to get rolling? And I mean, if this is Sidney Crosby, if this is the best player in the NHL, and a lot of people still think he is, if this is the best player of this generation, he should be able to shine in a moment like this. Or maybe this is just the start of another brutal scoring slump. But I tell you what, as a hockey fan, I hope it's not. As a fan of hockey, as a fan of the game, I don't think it's good when Sidney Crosby struggles. I mean, every player goes on their slumps, whatever, that's natural. But I mean, let's pretend Sidney Crosby is no longer Sidney Crosby. Let's pretend he's no longer Sid the Kid, the Phenom. What's good about that? He he literally saved the Pittsburgh Penguins. Scoring over 100 points as a rookie like it was nothing. Doing deeks and dangles in the shootout, backhand shelf, and making commentators squeal like they just got a Nintendo 64 for Christmas. Nintendo 64! Ah! Scoring title after scoring title. Hart trophy after Hart trophy. Bulldozing through opponents with his giant hockey bum. Sid the Kid Crosdashian. And oh yeah, Stanley Cup, that little chestnut. Silliness aside, as a fan of the sport, I'm not ready for that to be over. Every single healthy season Crosby had, he either won the scoring title or was a threat to win it. Greatness is just what we expect of him, and we've kind of taken it for granted. It's part of why I think so many people cheer against him, is they want someone to beat him, because at one point that looked pretty much impossible. Just let me say this to the youngest generation of hockey fans. And it's not like I'm old. I'm actually a few months younger than Sidney Crosby. But I am old enough to appreciate certain players. I'm old enough to appreciate Eric Lindros, Peter Forsberg, Pavel Bure, and all 3 of those players have 2 things in common. 1, they were truly great, and 2, the sport of hockey was robbed of them. Lindros only played 760 games, Forsberg only 708, Bure 702, and these guys were beasts, monsters, destroyers of everyone in their way on the ice. Lindros slowed down quite a bit towards the end, but Forsberg and Bure were lethal until the moment they hung their skates up, and the reason they hung them up is injuries caught up with them. And I just look at how injuries and other factors force those guys to fizzle out and eventually leave the game. And I look at Crosby's struggles, I look at some of the things people are saying about him, and I look at his injury history, and I go, please no, please not him. For crying out loud, for a lot of non-hockey fans, which is exactly who the NHL is hoping to attract, Sidney Crosby is the only player they can name. So as a fan of hockey, not even as a fan of the Penguins, I hope this 3-game streak is the start of something big for Sid. Because the other option, it's kind of a bummer.